The battle for power in Syria is still on. The civil war created 11 million refugees and also caused a divide between global powers, since some are opposing Assad and others are supporting him. The humanitarian crisis in Syria is devastating. For the past 5 years, Syrian population is suffering but never lost hope. Boats capsized in the sea, chemical weapons were believed to be used on civilians, and Assad blockages caused hunger, death, and poverty. The conflict in Syria involved many countries, so the international law can be a restriction to the action of the United States. The United States cannot alone stop the war in Syria. Under the international law and legally, the United States has no right to act against al-Assad. On the other hand, the United States believes that it can act in self-defense against terrorist groups, such as ISIS, to protect its interests in Iraq and the region. The United States can also use the humanitarian intervention reason to act against al-Assad. The problem is that Congress did not yet authorize such actions, but the President has the power as a Commander-in-Chief to do so. The Congress passed in the past legislations allowing the war to fight against ISIS and al-Qaeda, and therefore a direct act against al-Assad can be justified. President Trump has already ordered dozens of airstrikes against al-Assad air forces weeks ago, and he decided to act to stop what is believed to be chemical attacks on civilians. The United States is already having a strong presence in the Middle East and formed many coalitions to fight terrorism there. It must continue to fight for freedom and justice. The United States should listen to the people of Syria and help them end the oppression of al-Assad and his attacks on civilians. The United States have the capability and showed that the government can put an end to this war so refugees can go home. But while they are not home, the United States as a world leader and a superpower, and because it's involved in Syria and Iraq, need to take responsibility in helping civilians by securing them better care and respect. Currently, Mr. Trump has already signed an executive order banning immigration from certain Muslim countries, including Syria. President Trump believes that some immigrants and refugees could be terrorists, and he's afraid they may slip into the United States. The United States is supporting the effort of many international organizations inside Syria and also in the region. Furthermore, the United States is assisting other countries that took refugees in, such as Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and Egypt. Projected number of Syrian refugees that the United States agreed on secure permanent and temporary resettlement is 130,000 Syrian refugees. In 2016, only 10,000 Syrian refugees were admitted to the country. President Trump made admitting Syrian refugees a long and difficult process where refugees are subject to extreme vetting since he's anxious about national security and the threat of terrorism. There are many reasons to change the current U.S. policy. First, the United States is under pressure from the European Union and the United Nations to accept more refugees and play a bigger role in the global refugee crisis. The United States should help its European and Middle Eastern allies with strong political support and maintain its leadership role in refugees resettlement by providing shelter and hope. The second reason for changes is that there are no safe zones that can help the displaced Syrians. The United States is not providing protection by ground troops or by air for civilians. Refugees are losing all hope to return home, and they are abandoned by the superpower that's supposed to protect them. The third reason for change is that the United States is not helping enough, and if its actions continue, many countries such as Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, and Egypt can be destabilizing, and their political order can be weakening and become even more fragile, which will affect the security and stability of the whole region. Another reason for change is to maintain the moral responsibility that Americans stand for. Denying refugees entrance to the United States breaks the historic traditions of this nation and its resettlement program that started in the 1970s, and its position as a safe haven for the persecuted. Americans stand for human dignity and respect for human rights. If we do not help refugees, we give an impression that our nation is morally corrupt. There are many policy options that the United States should be considering. The first option is to use influence and pressure to put in place a ceasefire in Syria. Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and other states should come together and secure a safe zone that allows refugees to come home. The second option is that the United States can assist and give more to institutions and organizations such as the United Nations High Commission for Refugees and the World Food Program to improve the conditions of refugees. These organizations are underfunded right now, and camps' conditions are very bad. Third option is increase the number of processing facilities in neighboring countries and Europe and speed up the process of screening and checking refugees. Refugees cannot wait 2 years in camps. They are vulnerable and in need of fast resettlement. The fourth option is moving al-Assad from power. International effort is a good option. A possible military attack against Syrian forces may be the only way to stop the killing and displacement of civilians. Trump believed that the dictator needs to go and that he crossed many lines. The United States is taking steps to form an international effort to remove Assad right now. The fifth option is that the United States has to stop supporting the opposition groups, since many terrorist groups are benefiting from this support. President Trump said that the United States does not know who these people are. Most of the rebels that the United States support fought alongside ISIS. Each of the options have pros and cons. For the safe zone option, the pros can be a safe zone free of arms and conflict that will protect civilians and aid workers. A safe zone can help save hundreds of thousands of lives and ease the pressure of the civil war. Cons for this option is that a safe zone can be expensive, complex, and hard to maintain. Safe zone can also be a target for genocide, especially if armed groups do not respect international humanitarian laws. In addition, consent of all parties to the conflict is hard to get. The second option, in form of giving more to institutions and organizations to assist refugees, have its pros. Every day, more people are displaced in Syria. Donation to UNICEF, World Food Programs, United Nations High Commission for Refugees are essential to provide health, clothing, food, schools, and physical and psychological protection, especially to Syrian kids. The United States is still the biggest donor of humanitarian assistance in Syria. The United States is working with the United Nations Agency and other non-governmental organizations to help the refugees affected by the ongoing crisis. The con of this option is that the United States government cannot sacrifice its national interests by overspending on humanitarian crises. There are also many crises in Africa and other regions around the world that need assistance. The United States cannot alone fix all the world's problems. For the third option, which is to increase processing facilities in neighboring countries and Europe, the United States is already running 9 screening centers around the world. Additional centers will accelerate the process and increase the number of refugees that can be resettled. Victims of the Syrian conflict can build a new life faster, and that will ease the humanitarian crisis. The cons of this option is that increasing the number of processing centers mean more refugees admitted to the United States, a problem that many politicians and governors oppose right now. The country can be vulnerable to more terrorist attacks since many believe that such a program is not safe or effective. In addition, this may require more money from taxpayers, which can cause public discontent. The fourth policy option is to move al-Assad from power by international effort. International isolation and sanction can weaken al-Assad. Greater coordination with the leadership of the United States can make a difference. Diplomacy and pressure can make al-Assad consent to a transitional government. The United States should work with Russia and coordinate with allies and partners to sit down and talk about ending the civil war. The international community can also act based on a humanitarian intervention to end and prevent crimes against humanity. A military intervention can be the last card to play if all efforts fail. The cons of this option is that military intervention can kill more civilians. In addition, Russia and China oppose military intervention, so the risks are real since many states can be involved, including Iran, Israel, and Turkey, and no one wants another world war or Cold War. Furthermore, terrorist groups may welcome the idea to fight Western forces right at home. The last policy option is that the United States has to stop supporting the opposition groups. The peaceful uprising in Syria took a new turn when the jihadists got involved and took control and cannot be separated from the moderate opposition. Stopping supporting the opposition will help stop the destruction of Syria and its people. Cons for this option is that stopping aid to opposition may give the terrorist groups more power to control the country. In addition, Syrian president may become more vicious and can launch more offensive attacks on its people. The United States have to take firm actions and end the war in Syria. An international peace conference, ceasefire agreement, increase the number of troops, and target the terrorist groups, set up a no-fly zone, devoting more resources to refugees, increase United States intervention with cooperation with NATO, the United Nations, and international partners and allies will allow the United States to maintain its powerful position in the Middle East and will increase the chances of political settlement. All these options can be done and are realistic since the war in Syria has been going for so long and because many states are involved. A compromise and agreement can be done by pushing diplomacy and putting pressure on all parties involved. Death toll is high and the number of displaced people and refugees are getting higher every day. The Syrian refugee crisis is putting a lot of stress on many countries, including the United States. The stability of the whole region is at risk. This is why the United States have to consider a major adjustment on its policy and take firm action as soon as possible.